even when we don't deserve what he gives. Somebody say grace. It works in two forms. Grace. God gives to us what we do not deserve. That's grace. That's one side of it. That's one side of it. If you turn it over, grace is God giving to us what we don't deserve, even with salvation and deliverance, but also with blessings and opportunities, what we really don't deserve. That's grace. That's one side of it. There's another side of grace. Grace is when you can't keep, or when you have lost what he has given, he's still a keeper. That when you have lost, or when there's something that is lacking there that you don't have, he will still keep you and cover you. Notice this. It will be as if you already have it. That's grace. That's kind of like a person that grew up not knowing their father. What God does is he reveals himself, that even though you didn't have a father, he shows himself to you as father and will raise up men in your life who will help to father you. That's grace. And so when you did not have something, that what God does is he shows up, and what he does is he keeps you without the thing that you thought you had to have. Whoa. I just went there real quick. That if you should, oh God, somebody's going to get this one. That if you should lose something or someone, somebody's getting this one. Because things don't always turn out the way that you think they should. So I got to help some other people. That when you lose something that you have, that what God will do is still give you grace to keep you, so that the thing that you no longer have, when God's grace shows up, it will be as if you still have it. So when you lose your job and God's grace shows up and all your bills are still being paid and you didn't get evicted from nowhere, that you still living there, that what God does, he shows up with grace. It shows up as if, notice this, listen, even when you had the loss, the grace shows up and operates as if you still have it. When folks walk off from you and say, I don't love you no more, don't want to be with you no more, what God does, he shows up with grace, and it's going to be as if he was there all along. Y'all don't hear what I'm saying up in this place. That's grace. When your money is funny, your change is strange, when grace shows up, it's going to be as if you never took a loss in your life. I'm trying to talk to somebody about grace, the grace of God. Joe! Grace. Grace gives you what you don't deserve. What you don't what? Deserve. And then it also keeps you in the midst of a loss, so that the thing that you lost, it will be as if you never lost it, and God's grace shows up. So the grace of God, the next G factor after the grace of God, he said the Lord gives, the Lord takes. We looked at the gift, we looked at the grace. Third one, here we go. After the grace of God, he says there's grief. I'm going through some stuff. It's hurting. This thing pains me every time I look at it. Every time I got to pass it. Every time I got to wake up to it. So we're not trying to give you something that's in balance. It can hurt and it will hurt. My God, and it does not take moments and days. Sometimes it takes a while to get over your loss. Can I get a witness up in here? So don't tell nobody, just get over it. Sometimes you just can't get over it. If I could get over it, I would have been over it by now. It's grief. Grief. Looks at the grief, the loss. Looks at the loss. He says, the Lord took away. That's the grief. The Lord took away. Look at that in verse 21. So we looked at three things. The fourth one in our close is that when we consider the G factor of radical faith, we must look at the glory of God. The glory of God. Number four, the glory of God. And so, as we look at the glory of God, 4 areas that deal with radical faith. A father's faith in God. 1 is what? The gift of God. Number 2 is the grace of. Number 3 is the grief. Number 4 is the glory of God. So, in our close, let's look at Job 1 and 21. It's all contained right there. He said, naked came I, verse 21 on the overhead. Naked came I out of my mother's womb. Naked shall I return. The Lord gave the gift. Everybody say the gift. The Lord has taken away. That's dealing with the grace. Somebody say the grace. It says, and then there's a third part. When he took it away, I'm still dealing with it. The grief, even though he's given me grace to cover the grief. Somebody say the grief. Lord, take away. The last clause of this is, blessed be the name of the Lord. That's the glory. In other words, I've got a gift. God covered it with his grace. I've been grieving. But in all of this, I still got to give God glory. Because I'm still here. The glory of God, that's why he rose up on his way down from going from the floor. He said, blessed be the name of the Lord. I still have a responsibility. I still am going to bless God. I don't want you feeling sorry for me.